Aha! I found
And
it.
you have found it. Yes.
Ah.
But what everybody, you paint this as an industrial bit. What they don't actually know is really all it is that space between the exterior wall and the interior wall that you decide to throw some green paint on it. Not even well. I think you just quickly did it with a roller, and that sifter of M&Ms is broken. I mean, we got to reach into broken glass to get those M&Ms, and they're not actual green M&Ms. They're just painted. I think with the same roller. I think they were just sitting there
Just
when you were painting the room, and it dripped there. It's like, oh yeah, this looks exquisite. We don't even have enough room here for a bench. Standing room only, and I'm sitting here in the back, and I'm taking up the most space out of all of them. Meanwhile, poor Coffee Cat's got to sit in that space. You see that space over there, right, between the 2x4s? How is a brother supposed to breathe in there?
yeah, well,
Luxury, my
we
fat
make do, right? Yeah. When this theater troupe finally makes it big, maybe we can afford some luxuries like not painted on M&Ms. And until then, it's
maybe water will actually come in bottles instead of us getting the condensation off the pipes up here.
yeah. Well, I mean the insulation filters the water as it kind of drips through it, so that's a good when will you ever get fiberglass strained water, right? So hello to you. So everyone, this is MacabreDerek. If you haven't heard him, you're hearing him, and if you haven't seen him, then you can do so on Sundays and Mondays on his own channel, named after himself. Is that a coincidence? I think not. And Derek, if you want to throw a link to your channel, you may certainly do so, and give a little bit of a you could show off your pedigree. Nobles in D&D backgrounds get a scroll of pedigree to prove to any who doubt your lineage or some aspects of your heritage. So if you would like to unfurl the funerary wrap of your pedigree, you're certainly welcome to do so.
Interesting choice of words. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is MacabreDerek. If you haven't ended up here seeing me before, well, you haven't been here on Tuesdays, where I once ended up playing a character that was prevalent. Now it's up in the air, but to end up giving a bit of my pedigree. Okay, so long story short, I have roughly now 22 years in tabletop RPGs. Primarily, when I started, it was Vampire Head, or pardon. I ended up starting with D&D, actually Dragon Quest, if you remember that board game.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
yeah, so that's where I ended up starting. So that was pseudo second edition. Um, 3 came out, so I ended up starting into that. 3.5 got real big, so I ended up leaning into that, and went into Vampire Requiem. So got a Taste of Masquerade, primarily went into Requiem. Ran that for about 5-6 years. And then ended up going back to D&D. Then I ended up playing in a open game that was New Serum for probably about a year and a half straight of the same character. And this was literally playing at least 4 to 5 times a week. So it was
Ooh,
very intensive.
yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, literally over, I think at one point its high point, it was like over 100 players. So it was actually very interesting to end up doing, all on Facebook.
Hmm.
But I ended up going back to hit D&D, and I've been kind of running games on and off it, depending on the season, the groups, and time availability. As for what I do, I end up doing a lot of horror. I thrive. I make a running gag where I thrive on player trauma. And if I can't end up moving you to tears or make you want to jump over the table and strangle me, I'm not doing my job. So, when it ends up coming down to this, I end up running on his Sunday a workshop, and we will be starting Detroit by Night. The Motor City broke down.
Ooh.
And I also do art during Mondays, along with some tabletop talk. And I'm usually open to end up helping people out, especially new storytellers. Our word for game masters or dungeon master.
Yeah, yeah.
And we end up tending to end up going through not only character creation, but how to actually build up your game. And one of the things that we're going to touch on here, and that works in the noir setting, because, that's a really good segue now, is we end up having these four characters loosely built. But what we're going to do here, and you're going to be surprised on how quick this can develop, is we're just going to take what we've already developed and we're going to start to kind of flesh it out a bit more. We're going to find out that we have all these freaking options. I mean, probably, I would, on the high mark, you have literally 3/4 of your entire campaign already written for you in nothing more than the player sheets.
I'm glad that you brought that up because on this channel, and I know I'm preaching to the choir to you, Derek, but on this channel we do try and extrapolate as much information as we can from the players. But for things like NPCs and villains, I've traditionally gone to the DMG, and while we've pulled some aspects, actually I think it's more accurate to say we build an NPC or a villain out of some random prompting, and then we sort of like fire some grappling hooks from the characters into the villains, and to create a link in that regard. And perhaps a little bit of that could be done here because, as you can see, and everyone else, I have a blank canvas and 4 squares, and this is a technique that's a lot more visual, and this is one that I've seen you use to great success. And I figure, you know what, if you can do it, maybe I can learn how to do it as well, and try and shake off that. You learn to do something, and you might stick to it, or you might feel a little uncomfortable stepping outside the boundaries of trying to conceptualize something, especially as a storyteller, as a DM. I want to put on a good presentation for my players. It's something that you say, the story is your player's story, not your own. And obviously, you have to enjoy running it as the DM or the storyteller. But in your focus and mine, it is about who are the characters and what they're the product of the world, else they wouldn't exist. And so how can the world in return be an opportunity for them to explore, conquer, be crushed under the heel of, or find this opportunity otherwise.
Yeah. And this is one of the things that we're going to end up taking a look at here, because if we end up going over, you have all these notes, which I am still going over, and they're, if I recall, these are the level 0 stuff, right?
Correct. These characters are level 0, so they only have their racial traits and their background traits and features. We do not have a class yet. So that means they have, 4 to 8 hit points apiece. And while they have a proficiency bonus of 2, that really only gets added into things like investigation, or, if they have a proficiency in a skill, because at this point they're not even really proficient with weapons, because backgrounds are race. Well, some races do, but none of the races we generated give weapon proficiency, and so they're squishy. They're relatively untrained, and you got to survive in this in this noir setting. And they're all flawed characters as well. We're not talking noble, bright paladins going to rescue the princess from the dragon kind of a thing. If we're talking that, then it's purely in metaphor for something else that's going on this more street level. And Derek, I'm sure you're familiar with that term, but for people out there, this is D&D. So this fantasy noir, this is street level stuff. This is in Eberron specifically. Remember, they said like the king of the region is a veteran of the last war, and he's a level 7 fighter. And so that should show this power level, because in D&D we're often like, I can't wait till I hit level 14, and we're plotting several levels ahead, and it's exciting as we get phenomenal cosmic power. Well, this setting and the concept we're going for is more of the itty bitty living space, Magic exists. Magic is broad. It's just not deep. And level 0 characters are a good way to start. And honestly, by the time you hit 3rd level and you get your archetype, well, for most classes you do, you are you're a force to be reckoned with. Like, the people in your city or even in the region are going to know who you are at 3rd level. But that also means that things can still remain deadly or not over the top and have things kind of easily solved with the phenomenal cosmic power. Because we got to make do with the itty-bitty living space.
Oh God, if I can remember who quoted it, I always end up thinking, phenomenal cosmic power, itty bitty little liver. Because that's really what this is going to end up turning into. But let's get right out of here. All right. So we currently have, right off the bat, we currently have a gnome chronicler. So already I know who's getting the short end of the stick.
Would you like me to color code anything? Like, if we put the gnome chronicler, and for those of you out there, chronicler is a background out of Moorgrave Miscellany where you're a journalist. You know, you're in it for the scoop. You're in it to try and, dig up dirt. You could be a tabloid person. You could, be a war reporter, that kind of a thing. But do you want me to assign some colors, or are we doing this in black and white? What would you like me to do? Because our chronicler doesn't even have a name yet.
Yeah. So first we're gonna focus on name, and I'm gonna let the chat end up deciding this. Like, we're just gonna focus on one point or after another. Now, we don't need to name everything.
Okay.
We don't. It could be very much a fill in the blanks, but for ease of us not just saying the gnome, let's give them a name, something we can refer to. Because here's the thing: the second you name it, you get attached to it, and that's gonna work very well for us.
Well, something that comes to mind, and chat is certainly welcome. Ivlon's saying Nomethy. Something that comes to mind, maybe if we go with that, if you name it, you're going to get attached to it. Maybe in this setting where everyone has a sin, everyone has a secret, maybe if someone knows your name, it's not necessarily true name magic, or at least not as we consider it in an arcane sense, but maybe if someone knows that your actual name, it could invoke some bitterness or resentment, or it could possibly cause some unwanted eyeballs in your direction. Maybe they get together and not exactly like superhero names, but they refer to themselves in, I don't know, as a nickname, in some way. Would that, I don't know, do you think that, calling each other nicknames, maybe not even really understanding who the real names are, could that work in this sort of environment?
Yeah, I think that can work. I think that can definitely work.
In your vampire cadre, right? Or is it coterie? Do the characters, or will they refer to themselves as Mouse or Nightmare, or is there something else?
I'm pretty sure they'll end up referring to that, but interesting note, you have to remember who also end up giving themselves those names, right?
Right.
You notice that actually comes from the Nosferatu. Now, Mouse is a special case in that Mouse ended up taking that name way before his turn, but oftentimes Nosferatu will end up taking on a new name, because who they once were visually no longer applies, and for all sake and purposes, the second that they say they're somebody else, how do you prove otherwise? How do you even begin to find who this person was in life, right?
Okay.
So it's kind of a small cultural defense mechanism when you think about it.
I love that explanation, and to have then a mixed party of people who are comfortable with it, or because I guess you could get someone who says, you know what, my name is already, the mud on my shoes. What does it matter? It can't go any lower. I might as well use it to, have to fill out less paperwork.
Well, if you're filling out paperwork, you rolled a Ventru. But let's focus on here.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got this gnome chronicler, right?
Yes.
So starting off right there. apparently Francis or Rollo is up, or just Dan. Dan! Dan! Is up for debate. Hands down one of the best internal memes from my own Discord. Thank you for bringing that up, Hive. Long story short, when you introduce yourself to somebody of prestige, such as a harpy, you do not just end up dropping your first name and consider that the end of the conversation. Especially after somebody's giving the huge spiel of I am yada 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 of such and such with this grandsire and all this kind of stuff, and then somebody shows up. My name's Dan. Side lesson. So we'll go with Francis. I think Francis will work. Just why not? Noir setting seems like we can kind of tie it in. Up to you, Maddie. These are your brain children, so let's figure out a name.
Sure. All right, so we have a gnome reporter. He is a young adult, at least in his race and culture. He's 96 years old, but you know what? For a gnome, that he's 20s. No higher than early 30s, I'd imagine. Is very intelligent and has and is very charismatic, as an investigative reporter is wont to do. Now, he is from a dragon-marked house, meaning that his, the blood in his veins is important because he's been able to manifest this very important aspect of Eberron. That said, the gnomes in Eberron are more conniving and sneaky, more politicky. And in fact, for this character, his family is facing financial ruin, and they've taken out a lucrative life insurance policy on him. But it only pays out if he dies under unusual circumstances. And so they're encouraging this person to seek out ever more dangerous adventures. Now, this is a note that the player would know and perhaps the character wouldn't, and that could be something to be discovered. But it's something important to discover that he seems to have his family's support. Maybe even to go out and, dig deep, go to Crime Alley, right behind the, the Gotham Theater, and see if you can overhear any juicy gossip, in hopes that, who'd imagine that, being killed by a ricochet of a bullet from a murderer of billionaires would pay out double on the life insurance policy, kind of a thing.
Or either that or Randa Cactus Jack, so either way. Bang, bang.
Now, this could go into it as well. He has a regret of he's made a bargain with an extraplanar entity. And so this is, maybe he was optimistic in his, youth. And his youth could have been a year ago. It could have been 20 years ago. But this is something that I would imagine if you've made a bargain, he received something in exchange for something else. And we may be looking if we ever get around to putting a class on him, this could very well go into Warlock.
It could. So here's the big thing, man. We're digging.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm struggling so hard not to start telling you just get to writing. Let's see where this goes. But like I said, we got to focus.
All right, so we have Francis. Whoops.
Yeah. All right, so let's just study Francis for a second here, because you touched on a lot of different things here that we can end going with.
Okay.
I keep forgetting you have to use a mouse, which is going to make this. I hope you did your stretches, Maddie.
Yep. Yeah, I actually did some practice drawing for D&D time with the zaniness I went through a little earlier.
Excellent. Okay, so we're just going to start hammering out boxes. So what you're basically going to do around Francis, preferably away from the center, at least
okay.
for now.
Here's Francis's quarter.
Yeah. So the reason being is that this is all going to come back around.
Okay.
What we're going to focus on, everything that's between the boxes, we're just going to end up treating as this is important to the inter-party relations. Okay? Everything external is the world.
Oh, gotcha. All right.
Okay, so that's kind of our first little dividing line. So right away, you end up saying there's a chronicler. Okay.
Yes.
Well, here's the thing. What does a chronicler do in Eberron? Right.
In particular,
Yep.
he is working at the Sharn Inquisitive, which is a blend of national news and the local gossip of Sharn, which is, big city Eberron. It's like the New York metropolis, Gotham City kind of a place.
All right. So right away, the Sharn Inquisitive is your first circle.
Okay.
That's our first organization. We might expand on it, but right now all we need is to say this is an important piece to Francis.
All right, I'm going to put down paper, and I'm going to put a circle around it.
Okay, excellent.
Done.
All right. So we're going to keep going down here, right? Your family is facing financial ruin to take on a lucrative life has taken out a lucrative life insurance policy on you. The only way it pays out is if you die under unusual circumstances, and they're encouraging you to seek out more dangerous adventures. Okay, so what you end up needing now is another circle with family, because now the family is important.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Third, okay, we have this extra plane you're being that this person made a regret with. Okay.
Okay.
So we're gonna end up doing another one, extra planar being. Okay.
I'm going to just put being for short and make a little circle around it. There we go.
Draw a bean. All right. Okay. So we got that. What's another thing we end up having? We have two things. One, gambler. Where's the gamble?
Ah. We can come up with, oh. I actually have a very good way of doing this.
Okay.
Sometimes making the noises helps, I find.
They would say also listening to the voices helps.
And settlements. Here we go. I'm just gonna roll a. I'm gonna roll 2d20. And this is for a an establishment name that you can find in the DMG. We're gonna use your vampire technique, but I'll introduce a little bit of D&D into this to keep it fantasy noir. 5 and 15. So the name of the gambling establishment is the Prancing Mountain.
Fancy.
So casino, or it doesn't even have to be a casino. It could be a back alleyway. But the Prancing Mountain.
All right. So right away we already have a few little tidbits there, but let's continue here.
Yep.
So we also have the dragon mark, right?
Yes. The mark of scribing, which is giving him this latent, some latent magical powers that are part of this like draconic history to Eberron.
Hmm.
Is the mark? Would the mark be on the outside?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
Because that ties him into the world, not closer to the party. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. Oh yeah.
Right? Ask, is this something that affects the whole of the group, or is this the personal? Because ultimately this is a push-me-pull-you situation, right?
Okay.
Francis's life impacts the party through Francis, but in order for the party to feel like it's coming together, we're going to end up starting to have to lean towards what Francis wants. But guess what? Francis isn't going to be the only one wanting things by the time we're done.
Okay.
So I think we got everything here to go with, and we're going to keep in mind the bonds and flaws and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, we're going to take a look at this, and we're going to end up figuring out ties. So you're going to make a quick line from each one of those circles towards Francis to say, this is a connection, okay? Now, if you want to get real detailed, you can actually write along that line to say what this connection is, and you can put an arrow so that, guess what, the relationship between the being and Francis, the being looks at Francis one way, Francis looks at the being the other way, right? So you might have two statements on the same line.
Okay, so I could make sort of, I guess it'll show up on stream watching. I could put kind of like a half arrow. And so Francis to the being is power or something, or maybe even regret. And the being to Francis, however, the word next to that is going to be, I guess, information. Maybe he's using Francis as an informant to, get... it's extra planar, but, if he's lurking in back alleyways, or maybe he's going to after he proves himself as a journalist, he's going to send him out on maybe some more dangerous missions to go snoop and get the dirt on other extra planar beings. And, of course, that could be super dangerous.
Yep. So you kind of get the idea. Now, we're not going to do that right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Because this is one of those things where it starts to develop really, really quickly if you... start going into like every single detail. But what we are going to do is we're going to just take a closer look. Now, we already did this first thought bubble for each one of these. These are tied. Now, here's where the questions start to come into. Okay? We first take a look and we first ask, what does the family want? Here's the thing. The family may be destitute, but are they really going to sacrifice Francis? Okay? Francis has this ability to end up gaining information, has a job that is actually, being able to help. However, we could end up making it a point that the reason that if they want this particular point is that the reason the family is destitute is because of his gambling addiction.
Ah.
Okay. So now, here's the thing, right? They were not. Francis doesn't know this. They were not the ones who came up with the idea. The casino was.
Okay.
Right. So we're just gonna end up putting a line between the family and the casino. Okay.
Got it.
Right. Now, this is where that little note-taking I was talking about actually comes into play, right? Or how I usually keep things straight.
Okay.
So, now, we know Francis was the one who ended up doing the gambling, because guess what? Francis actually makes money. He is capable of providing for his family if he stopped gambling away. Well, he's gotten into some serious debts here. So, the casino, wanting its payday, ends up saying, you know what? We're not going to let this settle. But we understand he's done you harm. So now our interests are aligned. Family doesn't want to admit this because the casino has something going for it. Now, this is probably, given we're in a noir setting, not a legal gambling operation, right? I think that would be a fair assessment.
It could be either way. I mean, if we're talking about a big city, I'm sure there's a lot of back alleyways, a lot of warehouse style underground stuff. There's probably some big legitimate casinos. But those big casinos, while they may be legal in operation, also have back doors. So this could really be, for sake of us sitting down as DMs, or to bridge it into other concepts like vampire storytellers, what would make a very compelling link? Because if our player submitted this character concept to us, and the player says, well, I blow off stress by gambling, we just made up the name. Like, the player only cares about the fact that this, at the prompt, that's how he handles stress. And apparently being a journalist, and I imagine so, could be a very stressful job in a city like this. And to be sent in sort of a perilous fashion out into the field, by your own job, let alone if you're getting some whispers from an extraplanar being or whatever. And so, he could go to a legitimate casino, or he could be going to the back alleyways, and heck, maybe that's even how he looks at it. As it's, if I lose, it sucks, but I can at least talk to the people in the back alleyway and maybe get some couple scoops if I'm maybe he tries to justify it by saying, well, I'm paying him money for information, but meanwhile, of course, he's losing money and it's causing problems. Because a part of this, right? You know that you have a sin as a character, like as a noir character. You're flawed. You have these regrets, and it doesn't just have to be an extraplanar being. He could regret, gambling, but he still does it, and maybe he's trying to justify it by saying, "Oh, well, at least I get some good. I get rumors from the boys in the alleyway," kind of a thing.
Yep, completely possible. Yeah, however, right? We're gonna start tying this a little bit more in.
Sure.
Like I said, this turns into fairly rapid fire here, because this is just a cursory glance. We can go a lot more deeper in this. So here's another bit. Okay, we have a family, so we can end up exploring that family. So I might make like anywhere from 3 to, well, no, families get pretty big to my understanding. So we can literally take that family and web it out by another like 7 or 10 if we wanted to, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to do that just for the sake of this example, but we can end up taking a look at a few different points and saying the family is expanded. We need a particular NPC. Now, who is the one person that Francis probably most reveres? The one person who would be closest to him in that family? We just need one. He can have a whole bunch of brothers and sisters, and he can have all that, but we're going to make just that one. Okay?
So let's see. Maybe if he's striking out in this fashion, real quick, should I link the dragon mark to the family because it is technically, it's by blood. Like, you are a part of this family to get this dragon mark. Could that, it could be its own thing for sure, but should I put a little line connecting those two? Or in this exercise, are we going to treat this as something different?
No, we are going to end up doing that at some point. Right now, we're just kind of, you notice I'm focusing on one aspect.
Yeah.
Then we tie it into the next. Then we focus on that aspect, tie it into another.
Okay. Thank you, because I tend to, like, it cascades and I see what's already up there, and
by all means, if you see that, go ahead. This is where you get these webs that have, like, are 6 to 8 circles deep.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's leapfrogging from one thing to the other. So in this regard, we're going to start with a single family member. Now, the reason we need this, okay, is this one family member needs to be someone he cares about. Now, ultimately, his flaw, this gambling addiction that Francis has, is the thing that is indirectly harming the one person he respects. But this one person that he respects is also part of this whole casino gig. We're going to tie that not only into the dragon mark, but we're going to tie this into the being.
Then let's say that maybe a cousin of his set him on the path for this particular brand. Maybe his family is more either proper journalists, or they print books, maybe a little bit more heightened. He's a smart person. He's a 16 int. He got a good education. And so maybe, I don't know, his family makes encyclopedias, but, he's still in writing technically, but maybe that kind of, that errant cousin, who went off and is striking out beyond the normal bounds of the family, ended up having some success and perhaps lured this character, Francis, into this. It's not as seedy. I mean, it's gossipy, so it's not a tabloid, but it's a little bit more trashy in regards, because it's you're reporting on he said, she said, which is sort of the headline is the national news. And you're like, oh, war breaks out. But then after you read that article, oh, and did you know that the sheriff, the sheriff's wife is pregnant and it's not by him? Read more on page 2 or something like that. And so you're like, wow, serious issue. That got my eyeballs. We're going to war again? And then suddenly, you're hooked by that, and then it turns into a gossip column.
Probably. But we're going to take a look at that then, right? So, okay, we know it's his cousin, so we're just going to write cousin in
Sure.
there. All right? So you seeing how you're kind of fleshing out, like you're going with these ideas. And I'm going to let you take the next one, but here's the thing. The next time you go on that tangent, I want you to just write it as a thought bubble. Every time a new thing gets in, put it
All
as
right.
a thought bubble.
All right.
Thought bubble. Watch how fast this gets out of control.
See, this is good practice because I don't practice the storytelling in this fashion, and so to sit down and learn this technique is it's fun. I'm enjoying looking at the things that I may already have in my head, but displaying it and understanding it differently. All right, so we have the cousin.
We're gonna make a line from the cousin to the family because they're involved.
Okay.
Okay. So they're involved in this little scheme with the family in the casino, and they have a vested interest. Now they might be on Francis's side and not wanting the casino to win in this regard. Okay.
Okay.
So here's the thing: the cousin. Okay, family we're going to tie to the dragon mark, but the cousin is who we're going to tie to the being.
Gotcha.
Because Francis isn't the only one who made regrets. There's a reason Francis got this offer in the first place.
All right, so a line from the family to the dragon mark.
Yep.
And then a line from the being
To the cousin.
to the
Now,
cousin.
if you have to draw through, my suggestion is to... Yep, okay, you're already doing it. Fantastic. Alright. The reason that we're doing this is because the dragon mark is important, right?
Yes.
But the cousin offered something to the being. Because we know this dragon mark's important, and we know it's shared by blood, right?
Yes.
The cousin offered his mark.
Ah. All right,
To
so
protect Francis. So Francis, despite being the one who gets the power, ultimately the being is just kind of paying the debt. Does that make sense? So when he interacts with this cousin, however this mark manifests, however it goes, Francis is going to slowly start realizing his cousin doesn't have one.
okay.
Or it's not involved in him. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
What did the cousin get from the being then?
The cousin ended up getting Francis's safety. The cousin doesn't want the family.
Oh.
inherit. So the cousin is the only one in that family who doesn't want him to die. And
Gotcha.
the family might be better off with Francis dead. His cousin believes otherwise, and he's willing to give up his lineage to do so.
Oh, that's a really strong. Yeah, gotcha.
Okay? But here's the thing. There's a caveat, and this is a caveat because the cousin can become a very important NPC here. The bargain remains so long as Francis never knows about the deal.
Okay, so he'll have to remain ignorant to that so that it seems like the being is getting the sole service of Francis.
Yes. The cousin can't tell Francis and actually has to actively dissuade Francis from actually investigating his own family.
Ah.
Okay?
Okay.
Now, here's the thing. If this pact is broken, cousin still loses his mark, The being no longer needs to give power, but now he has access to the mark and all of the info that Francis has given him.
And that works in the point, the being in this case is almost like the debt holder of the casino, because the casino will win if Francis dies, and maybe, I don't know, the being can manipulate the luck or circumstances. So if the insurance policy was, it'd be a shame if Francis was walking by an apartment building and a grand piano fell on him Looney Tunes style, but it pays out megabucks, the being could be keeping these extraneous circumstances from occurring. Not that the piano wouldn't fall, but it wouldn't fall on him, perhaps. Because he actually stepped on a piece of gum on the sidewalk, and it was like, oh, really, and went to go scrape it off, and that's when the piano fell, and it would have been him, perhaps in some way. But it's a constant reminder, I suppose, if not directly, if he's not known, but that these things are happening. People might be after him.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing.
Okay.
We have this newspaper, right?
Yes.
I want you to make a small circle right above it.
Okay.
So we need one more NPC here.
Got it. Yep.
And this is a small rival, an adversary. Okay?
Okay.
So we're going to make that tied immediately. Put adversary for sake of argument. Or rival, whatever you want to put it.
Rival shorter.
Okay. All right. So, here's the thing. The newspaper, this rival got a tip that a member of his colleague's family no longer has the dragon mark and is now proactively harassing and trying to investigate Francis's cousin, and is wanting to ruin Francis's career on this.
So I need to put a line between newspaper and rival and NPC cousin.
Yeah.
All right.
So, you kind of see on how this all of a sudden gets really complicated for Francis. We haven't even involved the larger world yet.
It is. At the same time, I think he has a blissful ignorance of a lot of what's going on outside of himself.
And that's the point.
Yeah.
Right? Because here's your call to action, right? Is when the cousin goes up to Francis at the party and says, look, I need your help. There's this one person, I don't know who the hell they are, but they won't leave me alone, right? Sure, we'll look into it. And it's like, I know that guy. What's going on here? Well, now things suddenly got complicated. Is now cousin having no idea why the rival was here investigating him in the first place, now has accidentally put himself in potential danger to breach his own contract.
With this style of plotting, this very much is the saying of, oh, what a tangled web we weave. Of course, it goes on when we learn to deceive, but this is definitely, this has gone from a simple square named Francis.
Yeah. All right. Now this is a very simple version of what we do. Okay? Now, this is just understanding the relations, right?
Yes.
Now, you'd fill it out in more detail and what have you, and what the dynamics of each one of these relations are. But what can Francis do amongst this group that doesn't affect the whole field?
That doesn't? I think, I don't know, with his access, especially with the press pass feature, I mean, he can get into a lot of places, and he's even though he's a level 0 adventurer, he has proficiency with investigation and insight. I think that really anything he does in some way, directly or indirectly, can affect the other characters.
Which means they're going to react, right?
Okay.
Here's the thing. Player acts, NPCs react, now the player has to act again. Whose story is this?
It's theirs, plural. Right?
It's Francis's, ultimately. everything that Francis does makes his own plot.
Oh, okay. All right. I understand where you're going with that. Then, yes.
Okay.
Because he has his own. Well, we're talking squares and whatnot, but he has his own sphere of influence, and there's really nothing he does that won't send ripples throughout that sphere.
You got it. All right. So I'm going to let you take the next one. And I'm going to be here to coach if you have a question or anything like that. I want you to ask. But I want you to end up starting with the next one. And I want you, much like you were earlier, okay, you notice how you wanted to go on tangents naturally?
Yeah.
I want you to go on those tangents. I just want you to write it down in the same fashion. Now, I purposely kept the leash on Francis because I didn't need a lot of bubbles to make this a very knife edge scenario.
Yeah.
Watch what happens when you do it.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep. We're gonna play some bumper bowling for some plot web development, and let's go from here. So the next character we're looking at, again, it could use a name. She is a female swift stride shifter. So someone kind of maybe more feline, like a quick animal. It doesn't even have to be feline. Like a cheetah or whatever. We could even go kind of bird-like, like a running bird, an emu, or an ostrich or something. But we have this. What's that?
Raptor.
A raptor? That can work. Yeah. So she has, she has the reptilian eyes. Probably has a more of a pallor of a non, I guess, whatever we would consider a normal skin tone. Because I don't know. I see dinosaurs painted orange and all other kinds of things. So.
Ironically, I wasn't thinking dinosaur.
Oh! You were thinking, yeah, a bird of prey. That's right. So she's very dexterous, acrobatics, investigation, and insight, and that's because her job is as an auditor, and an auditor in this regard is half accountant and half not security guard. You're like a locksmith. You're hired by companies or banks or individuals to test security measures, including vaults and traps and all kinds of things like that. And so her job has made her more perceptive, and of course, to get out of the way of a deadly trap going off, she's very dexterous and has these acrobatic skills. So that's her job. She tests locks and she measures out blueprints for traps and this sort of stuff. Let's see. She has a strong connection to a distinct animal spirit. She invokes the patron spirit when searching for inspiration or needs luck, and you pattern your behavior after this animal. And so that is speaking to me that there is it's not necessarily a magical conjured one. This is just a totemic creature, an animistic creature to which she prays or argues with or something along those lines. Whoops. So we're going to make a bubble here, and we're going to call it Spirit. And we can also put down the job, her job, which...
Yep.
We'll put Vault Tech, but, TECH, because that's her job. And so she works there. Let's see, what else? Oh, her stress, by the way, is also that she gambles when she's extremely stressed. So we have an interesting possible link. If not directly, then indirectly to Francis. And,
Yep. It's okay. If that's the case, and you think that the casino works in that regard, put a line to her. Okay? And here's the thing. Remember how I said you start to figure out like the world naturally and the important points? That casino became very freaking important, didn't it?
Yeah. In fact, the casino might even hire her in order to measure its security for all the money and everything.
So now remember how we said we were making this very how do I put this? Very street level, right?
Yeah.
Are we not just designing a neighborhood right now?
It seems so that this casino is an important place.
Okay. So keep going through the character. Just figure out what are the big notes, big highlights. What do we need to do?
So she doesn't have a dragon mark. Her regret. She has a regret. You made a promise to a child or a lover that you failed to keep. And so that is going to spawn an NPC of some variety as well.
You got it.
And so we'll put NPC lover, and then we can fill in a name of the person, and come up with a reason that was that's important. Whoops. I want to test every limit, looking for patterns, sequences, and ciphers when I'm bored. I'm always pointing out people's flaws for their own good. So she's very observant. Security, the world's a dangerous place and everyone should be able to feel safe. Do what you can to help give innocent people a sense of security. The ideal could be born from the regret that she made a promise to keep this person safe. And that didn't happen. In fact, that could have even I don't know if that would have been professional or if that's what drove her into trying to learn the profession. So she wasn't able to keep this person safe, and that's what led to her working in the vault tech. That could have led to then her being hired to do some security measures for the casino, and because of the stress and regret.
Keep drawing it.
You're so mean.
Hey, you're going off on these tangents.
Yeah, I am. I can't help it.
I want you to use that tangent. We're using this.
Yeah. Nope. It makes sense. This is me relearning how to think. All right, so the NPC lover, vault tech job, and works for the casino, and each of these are directly connected to her, let alone each other. The spirit animal is probably, I think that's something she takes her own. It should be its own bubble. I think that's her a sanctuary for herself, which is interesting because vaults and whatnot are supposed to offer that. But here's something that's not physical that's able to provide her that kind of security. I want to help friends.
It's okay. I understand what you're thinking on that regard, but if I might make a point, right? We're playing a noir setting.
Okay.
What's safe in a noir setting? The safer it looks, what do you know is going to happen?
The more attractive it is for people to try and break in, because...
Yeah. How is that any different from the spirit in this relationship? Okay. That spirit, we already said we have this being.
The being.
Right?
Oh, yeah. So the being could be,
I'm just saying that you think that everything on the street is only on the street. No, there's ties to something greater. So that implies if the being's affecting something, the spirit may also be. The spirit may involve, but ultimately, it's not doing so on its own.
Okay. So you're saying it could remain its own thing, but also not be just what it appears. Here, I thought the implication was maybe the spirit is the being who's preying on people, similar to the casino as it preys on people in the neighborhood. there could be this being that's trying to get its hooks into people for because if it wants information, especially from someone who goes into vaults and measures security, what if that spirit is the manifestation of an alternate manifestation of this extraplanar being? Or is that,
go that route? You go with it. I'm not forcing your hand one way or the other. I'm just making you look at something and remember, if you have a bubble that's out on its own, it's effectively useless because it doesn't affect anything.
Yeah.
Right? And if it's not affecting anything, it might as well not exist. And if it might as well not exist, we're not really helping build up what this character was trying to build up in the first place, right? We're kind of ignoring a facet of the character.
Right.
And if this is their story, we're not doing them any favors by doing that, are we?
That makes sense.
Right.
Okay. So we can link the being. A part of me, I guess, was a circuit breaker as a DM, where I said, "Is this? I don't know. Is this too much? Is this too much of a trope? Is this too? Is this done? Or would it be obvious?" At the same time, we're very purposely delving into pulp noir. Everything is kind of that gritty, hard-boiled anyway. And so the ultimate realization that Francis and our to-be-named character here are connected through this being in which one takes solace and the other seems to take regretful power. That actually, I think, could be interesting and still fit in this stylized storytelling.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say it right now. Usher gave the best name for this character.
Oh, okay. Mula?
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that, Usher.
Point, I love it. No, it's okay. But here's the thing, right? If we're taking a look at this as a kind of like, okay, what are all the branches, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to figure out, why is this tied to this? Why is this tied to this? And here's the thing. Guess what? Now, because of what we set, what Francis does now indirectly affects Mula, even though they're completely unaware of the connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Now, this is where we got... Remember, I told you, it's a giant push-me-pull-you. Right? So you just need to figure out, and this is why I hash the NPCs the way I do. If you know the NPC, you know what they're gonna do. So if Mula tells this spirit something, what's gonna happen when on Francis's side?
Oh.
Right? Does that kind of make sense to you?
Yeah, and so I can see as a DM, if you don't have to have this, I guess, memorized, but if you have this as a map in front of you, as certain topics are discovered, it's an easy reference or a reminder for you, because in noir storytelling, even the document in Moorgrave Miscellany, it tells you, keep it tight and close. Keep the setting almost hyper localized. Not even just to a city, but a city can work, but almost to a couple blocks, or I guess a neighborhood, a district within the city, for telling this story. Keep it tight and close, because one thing will ripple into the next. And in a game of dire choices and consequences of moral ambiguity, someone may have a justified reason for doing something that ultimately harms another person.
Yep. And this is where we got this build-up, right? Now, you're going to start noticing things as it builds up, but we're going to just keep going here. So you got these 5 marks for Mula. What else came to mind? I know this wasn't just the only thing that was coming to mind.
Well, the one I added while we were talking is there's a dragon mark for the dwarves. That's the security dragon mark. And so this is another major family. It runs in the bloodline of dwarves of Eberron. And so while she's not a member of this family, obviously, we have a powerful family that is running this business. And we then also have Francis, who is a member of a dragon marked family. And so I think it's indirect, and I don't think I necessarily need to link it. But I thought that was important to bring up because Francis, especially with the press pass, let alone being dragon marked, may very well be able to, I don't know, talk to, interact with. I think it's House Kunderek, but that's the. I don't need to fill in the name. I want the concepts right now. But he might be able to interact, and so his interactions might ripple to Mula's job or job security in some fashion. Let's see, what else for her? I want to help friends achieve peak efficiency. Flaw, I'm paranoid, always imagining threats I have to defend against. That seems to be, I mean, for someone who's observant and who works on trying to lock things down and put things away and keep them safe, especially in the wake of a personal tragedy. Let's see.
So let's elaborate on that. What about this PC lover, this NPC lover? What about them? Where do you think that comes from? What do you think you can build off that?
Let's see.
It's not a dead end for you.
No. Let's take some inspiration. Use what's in front of you. This is an unusual custom, which is a part of the shifters in Eberron here. So it's a custom in so much that, maybe many of them have this animistic practice. And so this NPC lover is probably also a shifter. I don't know if there's necessarily a cultural taboo per the books, but this is our story, so we don't have to stick by it. But I'm going to put down the note of that this is another shifter. Well, I don't know. Because if they have protectors, maybe this person doesn't. Mula was hired because of her skills. She wasn't just, brought in off the streets and trained, in a vacuum here. So I wonder...
No, certainly not.
I wonder then if... She was doing a job beforehand that would have given her some of these skills. And I think investigation and insight are what you get from being an auditor. And so acrobatics and perception come from her being the specific type of shifter that she is. What would bring you into doing this? NPC lover, so it'd be someone that she would view that needs protection, and it formed some kind of a romance. This could have been, if we're talking about keeping it tight in a neighborhood, or to some kind of a district, then this could have been another kid in her building, and they would. Swift stride shifter, so acrobatics. So I'm thinking if it's a city, maybe some parkour. They go out and they would they look. They're kids. They're doing dangerous stuff together. And so this is a. Okay. So here we go. As kids, they'd kind of like sneak out and they do some some exploring of buildings, a little bit of parkour, going into construction sites or crumbling buildings, and she would always be the one to kind of scout ahead because she's naturally inclined to be graceful. She's naturally inclined to do this, but her friend who really wanted to go out and do this as well wasn't as much. And so she went ahead one day. Maybe they've been doing this for a while, and it just sort of became it's what we do. Maybe they even had their own. Maybe they even had their own secret spot where they'd go and they'd talk. Maybe that's where they had their first kiss or something on a rainy night or something.
So, Maddie, are you aware that you literally just ended up talking like 5 different bubbles just now?
Oh, aware? No, because I haven't trained myself yet to bubble everything that comes up per a point.
Yep, it's okay. But it's why I'm reminding you. I told you I'd coach you through it. Okay.
So all right. So hang on. One bubble is the hideaway. Hideaway. would the parkour aspect be a bubble, or is that more of a specialty along the line?
That's a part of the story of either a location or a person, right?
Okay.
You use these locations as a plot point because if it's parkour, we can't tie to another individual, right? But we could, for instance, tie a person who taught this kind of his skill, right? So you ask yourself, how important is this to this character, right? If this is in the best way, like your Occam's razor, if you would, of this question is, if this is threatened, does it matter to this character? That's your Occam's razor. Okay? Because if the casino's threatened, it threatens Mullah's livelihood. If the spirit's threatened, it threatens the only person they take solace in. If the job is threatened, it takes away the closest thing to family. If the location, this hideaway, is threatened, it takes away one of Mullah's only attachments left of this lover that she failed. You see what I'm getting at? So it becomes a very nice razor to be able to say, does this really matter, or is this a potential
okay. Yeah, this is me relearning the thinking process as it's put out before me here, instead of more just the stream of thought where I could just type things out. It slows you down, and I don't say that in a bad way. For what we do for character, for anyone out in the audience, Derek, I know you know this. For what we do for character generation, I could hit a button and have the spreadsheet just instantly create a character with all the parameters we use. But I purposely take things one step at a time in that fashion to slow down and to think. And so this is the same thing but different, where we're slowing down and we're thinking, we're doing it a little bit differently.
And Rodium ended up making a very interesting point. Like, do shifters mate for life, or does it matter what kind of animal they shift into? Or do they take after humans where they can move on if they lose the connection to a lover, right? So that is an important question we need to ask ourselves about Mullah, right?
Okay.
Because that really does color the NPC lover, doesn't it?
Then, if the NPC lover ended up getting injured in by her own miscalculation, that's probably why she needed to get the job, is to help take care of maybe this led to a partial paralysis in the lover, and so Mullah feels perhaps an instinctual bond. And if we're going noir, she may feel love, but at the same time the love is stagnating or becoming more of a regret. Someone that she did love and was very much authentically in love with, and she felt guilty about, has now gone from sort of a voluntary interaction of desire to be with the person into feelings of regret, or to feelings of obligation. And that feeling of obligation can quickly sour a relationship. And so you have the lover who might even, that lover might even say, it might even be thinking the same thing, but they don't talk about it. They don't bring it up because it's the way it is, and I don't want to spoil this, or I don't want to spoil that. And so both of them might actually be miserable, and all of this might have been water under the bridge, but their own, their own reactions sort of dammed up the bottom of the bridge. The water's backing up, it's kind of stagnating, and the pressure's building to some point. And what would happen? It would be good, right, to get the water flowing again, so it'd be pure and it wouldn't be all grungy and filled with algae and the pressure, because all the people downstream are going to suffer then. Not only have they suffered from the lack of water, but suddenly when they get it all back at once. But when that relationship might finally break over the course of the story, for some reason, that they finally just have a heart-to-heart. If her stress relief is going to the casino and gambling, and it's not talking to the person she claims that she loves, then there's obviously some sort of an issue, a breakdown in communication. But but I don't know how to conceptualize that as bubbles offhand. At least not without doing like a bunch of little micro bubbles about sort of a thought process or a chain reaction of what ifs for something that we haven't necessarily developed yet.
And that's what 90% of my webs turn out to be.
You're the experienced master in this too, so that's I'm glad you're here to guide.
It is. I'll tell you what. I'm just gonna, sake of argument. Let me just do this. Okay. So let me zoom in. So I got something here. I want you to continue on, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just do a real quick thought web, and I'm just gonna see if I can like hammer out something that looks legible.
Sure.
Okay.
Then so, what I'll do if you're doing that, I'm gonna go to the third character. I'm sure there's more bubbles I can put for Mula. But I'm gonna pick the low hanging fruit from the next character. And then and continue this practice here while you're doing that on the side for an example here.
Yeah, I'm going to give you an example off of one character, and I'm going to show you how my bubbles tend to look by the end. All right?
Okay.
So this way you kind of have this contrast and compare moment, and I'll do my best to walk you through it. Okay?
Our third character, who could use a name as well, a lawful neutral male aberrant dwarf. Now, what does aberrant mean in this regard? He is born with a dragon mark, but it is not one of the 12 houses. This is aberrant. It's a mutation. And these mutant marks do exist. And so being born this way, it's technically Child of Kyber is the race in Moorgrave Miscellany, with aberrant dwarf being the subrace. He's very strong, right? We went strength con. His mark has given him some latent powers, and in fact, because of this power, he had this death. It's not even a regret in the fact that we rolled for a debt or a regret. This is an extra. This is a bonus regret. Your aberrant mark caused a tragic death. This could have been someone you cared about, such as a lover or sibling, or you could have killed someone you hated, a tyrannical officer, a corrupt noble. Either way, you needed to flee from the consequences of that unintended murder. And so, a couple of the quick... again, I'm going for low-hanging fruit here. I don't want my own thoughts to stagnate or to have a bunch of doubt here. I'm going to I'll challenge myself. Let's get like 5 super obvious things for this character. I'm sure I could come up with like 5 super obvious things. We are going to have the death, whoever the death was that we can come back. We have the aberrant dragon mark. What else? That's going to give him magic. A hard road. So part of the racial trait is you get the features and skills of a second background. And that one is the criminal background, and that's almost like that could almost be a second layer here. Because as being a criminal, you get access to like a criminal contact and even a network. He has a debt. The lover was stricken with, we changed it to the lover. So instead of killing, because the debt was similar, but we could link it together. The lover was stricken with a degenerative disease that can't be cured by mundane means. If you can't get a lesser restoration soon, you're going to start showing symptoms. So we have a 200 gold piece debt that we can link to this lover. Or the lover of the sibling here. Oh, in that case... Well, you know what? We're already going for the lover aspect with the other character. I guess the other one we technically have well, not sibling, but family. Maybe is different because the cousin's kind of distant. So we're just going to put sibling down here. This way, it's more of an intimate bond. Then kind of a distant, yeah, we're related by blood, but it's really kind of, yeah, we share the mark, but that's where that goes. Now, his background, his other background, or rather his true background before we, really discovered that he had this criminal past, was as an aspirant. In Moorgrave Miscellany, aspirant is similar to the acolyte in the player's handbook, though it is more of a druidic bend than a religious bend. I mean, you could have an acolyte druid. There's nothing wrong with that. But this one is more tailored to performing natural rites, and the feature of wild hospitality means that it's sort of similar to the acolyte one, but it's different in the services that it can offer, because of, even if it's two sides of the same coin, clerics and druids are different, and so you're getting the druidic take. And without bringing up all of the PDFs and bogging down, just going, we have an acolyte druid. In terms that we've already used copiously on this stream. So there's probably going to be like a druid mentor that took him in after he fled the stricken sickness to avoid repercussions, and if not criminal, I don't know, other people could have died, and maybe the sibling, because they shared blood, didn't die because of, I don't know, the signature on the magic, but it turned into a degenerative disease. But he had to flee from the manifestation of his mark. Fled out to the wilds where a druid mentor took him in to try and control his magic and his thinking and to try and harness him. But back at home, there's this sibling that has this degenerative disease that was still caused. So by studying with the druids, it could be I hope to find a cure, or using the criminal contacts. I hope that I can afford enough gold to get together to get my brother or sister the magical, this sort of counter magic to what I did. Oh wait, oops. Did I make a? Oh no, I'm sorry. I model my behavior on a particular animal, and I prefer to sleep under the open sky. So we have a dwarf. We have someone who has fled. So it may not be a spirit animal per se, but this is more of an animal concept, which could be a token notion shared with Mula. But we also have then, not really a totem animal, but we have, what would be a good word? An animal inspiration? An animal inspiration of some kind.
I think that might work, yeah.
So there, like, he was maybe under the druid mentor, open up, choose to be like nature. You think you're aberrant, you don't think that you're natural, yet here you are in the world. You were born, and this thing manifested because you were born. He was taught to protect the natural world from threats that come from beyond reality, well, such as aberrations. So in this case, maybe he's trying to absolve himself in the very faith that would scorn him otherwise. So he probably has a very tolerant druid mentor. Such aberrations, fiends, and other things with no place in the world, which would also indicate that he's being taught to abhor things like this extraplanar being that has made a deal with Francis and is influencing Moolah. And Moolah has a spirit animal, while this dwarf character that needs a name doesn't. But the concept is the same. And so this would be... I guess that could be a bubble, sort of like No Outsiders in broad concept and in using D&D lingo.
No, so okay, like look at how much you already have to work with, right?
Yeah, this character has a lot going for him. And this is the low-hanging fruit. This is maybe too deep, as per the what I have going on here. I have more room. I can go even deeper if I need to, but there's a lot that's here. This character is definitely so far he's probably the most like noir and anguished and filled with regret. At the same time, I think because he's actively handling it, he's weird because he's probably the most tragic. And at the same time, he seems to be the most proactive about his tragedy, where he wants to confront it and not just, sweep it under the rug.
I got a really great noir story coming for you.
Rodium, you say that you want to name him Ulf and make his inspiration be a wolf because he took the name instead of being named Ulf? So there's this. The aberrant dragon mark is going to come around and is going to connect with the sibling. The debt is going to connect to the sibling and the aberrant dragon mark. The debt can also connect to the criminal. And the criminal was also part of this aberrant dragon mark as well. Whew, boy, he just has all his own thing going on. The animal inspiration would have been from his druid mentor. So I'm going to come around the back here. This no outsiders concept, it would also be a connection there. And for the death, your aberrant mark caused a tragic death. So in that case, that's actually the infliction of that. So death itself here is probably a bubble that I could fill in with something else, unless we conceptualize this to a he might have he has these powers. In fact, death could even just be his magic, or if he wants to call it death magic. He's definitely statted from how he has developed to probably go in with his strength and con to be more of a frontline person. Whenever he gets his first level as something, it'll probably be barbarian, fighter, or ranger maybe. Just something where you can use that prodigious strength and you can just take those hits. So death. So the concept death, I think I can erase. But I don't know, just replace it with something else. It doesn't matter what. But death has already been taken into account with our bubbles, so we have a free bubble to inflict something else on this poor man. There we go. All right, so there's a quick and dirty. I could also then tie if I want to keep drawing with blue lines. We have the spirit and the animal inspiration. Oh boy, these things are... I need better cable management.
Oh, don't worry. You will come to realize that this is definitely it can get complicated, but once we got a map going, I'm going to ask you a few questions, and all I want you to do is follow the logic. Okay? That's all you need to do.
Now, as I'm doing this cable management as well, I am doing my best to keep the interior space free, as for what you said. For that's what happens in the party. While these are notions that can connect with each other on the outside of the party here.
Yeah. But are you noticing, like you said, we want to keep this ground level, and everybody says, oh, there's nothing to do if we're only in a few city blocks. Really? Look at what's just come together.
Yeah, these are level 0 characters that are all... these are street level. And all of the adventure and all the things they've already experienced in life are... Ooh, you know what? I can connect his... I may be able, in some way, to connect Aberrant Dragon Mark, because it's in concept it is still a dragon mark, and whether it's considered culturally a legitimate one or not, this could very well be probably not to the peripheral one, because the security dragon mark isn't directly connected to Moolah, but as the dragon mark for Francis is a dragon mark, we can probably go around the outside here and connect Dragon Mark to Aberrant Dragon Mark. In that case, we have two party members who are the same thing but different. And in, perhaps even great in cultural ways, but sometimes if it's any port in a storm, you got to trust someone even if they're not like you.
Yeah. So...
Okay, so you see what I have? Is there anything else that popped up to mind, or do you need me to refer to something else now?
No, I think you got a good start here. All right. So, just in the time you did that,
Okay.
I'm going to crop this and I'm going to send this, and I want you to just observe what's happening here. And I just made this around one character, so I didn't feel the need to space it out in the appropriate bit, but I want to end up bringing in, we have all this talk about noir detectives and all this kind of stuff. So I figured, you know what, if we're talking reporters, let's go across a very typical archetype of noir reporter, actually.
Okay.
So I'm just saving this right now, and I am going to send this to you via private message.
It is received.
Yep. I'm still waiting for that slight chuckle.
Oh, okay, here we go. I hope this is an example that a lot of people can follow along.
Okay. So, for those of you who are not aware, I am a big fan of Venom. Okay? Now, if you think about what Brock's ultimate storyline is, it is that of a noir detective or a noir reporter.
Okay.
Is it not? Okay. So, in a slight fantasy element, that's just the introduction of another photographer who has these weird Spider-Man or the Spider-Man powers, and Brock's ultimate tie always leads to Parker. Now, if you take a look at the way this goes, everything keeps going back to Peter, right? Everything keeps going back to Peter. So just because of all these arrows going back to Peter, suddenly ends up turning into, now we know who our bad guy is, just by virtue of where the connections are.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I'm going to open this up in appropriate. So we end up taking a quick look here, and we have a whole bunch of ties. Now I got a few dead ends there, but that's because they are something we can actually build upon. But what's Brock's core? Works for the Daily Bugle, okay? He's got this boss who really wants to scoop on this new serial killer.
Yep.
They call him the Sin Eater. Brock suddenly gets this opportunity to end up getting a full confession from the Sin Eater. He wants to jump on, right? It's a way to make his boss happy, his family proud, his parents are disappointed in him. He loves his wife. He wants to provide for her. This would be a huge pay rise, but god dang it, Parker is always end up sending these photos to JJJ, and every single time, it puts Brock back in the dumps because he keeps getting this favoritism because Peter just keeps getting all these photos of this most hated figure in all of New York, right? Spider-Man. I mean,
Yeah.
who doesn't hate Spider-Man? So we can actually follow this, and if you stop and ask a single question of what does Brock do, you can actually watch on how it starts to affect everything around him. No matter what Brock does in the context of this relationship map, or even external, if he adds something to it, it affects something. Okay? So what's a basic thing that an adventurer would do? What's just something they would do inherently? What does it do?
I mean, go on a quest.
Okay, so it goes on a quest.
Sure.
Okay, so Brock goes on a quest. Okay, so that means Brock has to leave his wife for a minute.
Okay.
Right? Okay, well, guess what? There's a serial killer that's currently going after her. Take a look at the very top. Big top arc.
Yep. Serial killer is targeting, and it comes all the way around to Brock's wife.
Yep. All right. Brock is currently busy with this call to action to investigate Spider-Man. Why? Because J. Jonah Jameson, who owns the Daily Bugle, who Brock works for, hates Spider-Man. Brock figures this is a payday. Okay? Spider-Man is on the trail of this serial killer. Brock does not know he is working against his own interests.
Right.
Because this is intrigue.
And this is why this is a map that's really useful for DMs or storytellers, because if something does change, you can follow the cause and effect.
Yep.
Okay.
So let's take another one, right? Let's say, for sake of argument, beyond Brock's control, the lawyer's office gets blown up.
Okay.
I just want you to follow and look at the ties and figure out, okay, what's the natural conclusion here? Because that happened.
All right,
I'm not
so
going to guide you through it. I just want you to walk through it and take a look, see if you can make sense of it.
All right, so if the lawyer's office goes, well, Brock's wife works for the lawyer's office, and so either she went down with the building, or if she's still alive, she doesn't have a job anymore because the lawyer's office is gone.
Okay. So how does this impact the rest of the web?
That would mean that Brock is going to have to, while his wife, if she's still alive, he's going to have to work harder to supplement the income for their household, which is probably going to be more intense investigation on behalf of the Daily Bugle.
Yeah. What else might happen? Keep look at her other ties. Doesn't get along with his parents, right? Hey, this is the woman I chose to marry. She's such a floozy. Right? Okay, what happens with that relationship?
Then the parents are either going to say, well, she's gone if she does die, or if she's unemployed, the parents might, if they're going to be kind of those parents, are going to tell Brock, look, she's not employed anymore. She's a drain on resources. We didn't like her anyway, and are probably going to pressure her to like him to leave her or to do something along those lines, because now she's not just the floozy. She's a drag on all this.
Yep. Okay. So how would this now impact the Daily Bugle? You see on how this kind of ping pongs, right?
Yeah. Well, so the Daily Bugle might actually the Daily Bugle would benefit, because not only would Brock want to work harder, but the lawyer's office was building a case, as you noted, was building a case against the Daily Bugle, and if that case is gone, presumably they're not going to be in legal jeopardy anymore. And so
Yeah.
And so now they have a harder working employee, and they're probably saving themselves $1 million in legal fees from whatever this lawyer's office was going to do.
Now let's give Brock the benefit of the doubt. If he's a reporter worth his salt, and he realizes this, what do you think he's going to start thinking?
Oh, this is if he knows that his wife was working on a legal case against the Daily Bugle?
Yeah, well, it's his wife.
Oh, that I don't know. Some professions don't talk about that even with spouses. But if we're gonna make that presumption,
I'm just saying, like, this is where the ping ponging effect, right? You can go from one to another to another to another to another, and keep going down the line.
Well, if he's desperate for money, he could then take up with his journalistic skills. He could take some of the evidence that his wife has, and maybe even use it to blackmail or to put pressure on the Daily Bugle, or if not the company, then on J. Jonah Jameson himself, to supplement the lost income. Because now, he could say, oh, it so happens I was going by my wife's old workplace, and I just happened to find a thumb drive that had some interesting documents on it. And of course, so that could absolve the wife from feeding information. In fact, maybe the wife didn't even feed information but as a storyteller, this is giving us so many options to adapt on the fly to what our players are presuming or the direction that they want to go, because we do have this relationship map, and now we can think very quickly. If we want to make Brock more of that, more of a dark-hearted character, then he's going to use the excuse that he just happened to find a thumb drive in the crumpled remains of his wife's old law firm. And of course, J. Jonah, aren't you glad my wife is still alive? I just wanted to go and see if maybe I could find her old wedding photo. And sure enough, there's this very interesting thumb drive. Now about that, I'm willing to sell it to you. On my honor. Hey, I've worked for you as a loyal employee for years, but on my honor, I'll give it to you. But my wife is out of a job, and boy, sure, I could use something on the side. Wink. And
yeah, but so this is an example. And how long did you, or did I have to write this down from when I said, like, what, maybe 10 minutes?
Probably around there. I didn't time it necessarily, but it certainly, you did all of this while I'm taking the low hanging fruit from like the very obvious stuff off of the one character prompt here, and I just made some. Oh, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, technically 7 bubbles.
Now here's the thing: I didn't even use like all of it from canon. I just started adding little things. Like, good simple example, might not be relevant, but it might be. Aunt May and Brock's parents actually use the same bridge club.
Oh yeah, I saw that. I thought that was actually kind of fun.
Right? But now there's a point of information that's floating, isn't it?
Yeah,
right?
And so if it ever becomes relevant, then, and it may never, but it's there.
Yep. So this is kind of where, this is what we're developing, effectively. Now, try and imagine 4 of these, now interconnect those. You will never need to end up coming up with a scrap of material for the rest of it. You can easily run 6 months of campaign just on what the players provide.
I very much see that, and I hope that look, as an experienced I won't say storyteller. I think I've run a couple vampire sessions, not chronicles, well, campaigns in speak. I've run some sessions. I've played a lot, but I won't call myself a storyteller in that regard. I gotta earn those stripes. Oh hey, Katie Sue. And look at that! Oh, 5 Katie Sulings came along with you. Isn't that delightful? So hello to all of you, and welcome.
Welcome, Katie Sue. So yeah, if we end up taking a look at your own, like what you've already established,
yes.
Right? Is it possible for you to zoom out and for us to kind of get a broad look at this map?
Not sure.
That's okay. All right. So we notice what we have already, and you currently have 3 characters, and you've already done 2 of them, right? I only helped with the first one.
Correct.
But start looking at, okay, if Mula does something, right?
Okay.
Yeah, Francis does something. I forgot what the 3rd character's name is, but
Ulf.
Ulf. try and imagine what Ulf would he can do, and watching how all of this starts to springboard, right? You can literally have the entire world changing, and the world does, unbeknownst to the players, revolve around them, right? Now, each one of these circles has their own agenda, but only a few of them are actually going to push that agenda. So a simple example, the casino's happy with making money, but the bean seems to have like something bigger in mind, right? And ironically, the bean seems to have placed himself, even through your own ties, as being the big bad. Because remember what I showed you with Peter Parker? Is that not what the bean's turning into?
Oh, right. Because look, we have a green line, a blue line, and this brown line are all connecting to the being. So at least if we don't find one with the fourth character, at least 3 of the 4 characters have an interaction, or if not a direct, then an indirect interaction or reaction to the presence of this being.
Yep. That is the character who does the most shaking, because if the bean shifts anything, everyone feels it.
It's the spider in the middle of the web. Well, I mean, Spider-Man we were just talking about, but...
Yep. But this kind of gives you a chance to end up going over it, and guess what? When you start to piece all this together, you start to see these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you do this web again, the next time you do it, you're not going to put the bean on the outside near Francis. You're going to put him dead center, aren't you?
Yeah.
Kind of fascinating on how we start to learn about this plot that really didn't start as a plot. It just started as little ties, right? So right now with what you got, what's an event that can happen in the world? Like, or not even the world. What can happen in the neighborhood?
So neighborhood, we have we have a criminal. So there's criminal activity. There's this casino, which again, it could have a legitimate face, but it probably is. It might even be a part of this criminal enterprise. Hang on one second. I think there's a prompt that can also help out with this that I missed. Let me double check. Oh, no. Okay. So our druid acts like a spoiled child if he's under a lot of stress here. But that could be pouting in a corner. That could be doing a lot of other things here. So there's a newspaper. There's a casino. So it could be something that some kind of big news drops. Especially if it's a casino, let's say, that could be employing a lot of the neighborhood for servers, for cooks. If there is a hotel, the casino might be, kind of what we see in a lot of native reservations. They'll have a casino, and it could be a 5-star resort with the best carpet, the best wine, the best food, and generous slots, and everything to attract people. But once you look beyond the entrance to the reservation where that casino is, you notice that not everything else is 5-star. If you get what I'm saying, in that while it provides jobs and it provides income, there's still poverty. There is still there's a lot of there could be family stress, cultural stress. There could be alcoholism is something that does that there's problems with, and all of these can make for this. While it's more of an urban reservation in this sense, it's still a confined area that is concentrated. It's kind of insular to itself. It can't attract aspects from the outside, but it is dominating itself. And so between like the newspaper and the casino, I think these are some major movers and shakers that are employing people or affect people. Because if the newspaper lands a critical eye, even in the gossip section, on a local restaurant, we can go to like Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. There's a quest about a food critic. If you get on a famous critic's bad list, then suddenly you might be on some other lists that you didn't want to be on.
Yep. And you're really getting into it, Maddie. So here's just a mental exercise, okay?
Okay.
So put this in. Let's put it in the center for sake of argument.
Sure.
Okay. I want you to just put a circle in the center. Okay. And what's in that circle? The players found a body. That's
Okay.
it. That's all I want you doing.
Sure.
It's something that's going to be easy to erase. Okay.
Got it.
All right. So they got a body. I want you to just connect that body to one circle that is not the players. Just one. It doesn't matter which one it is. You're going to do it to several, in fact, but we're just going to do it to one.
Okay, so the body's not connected to Francis, but the body's connected to a circle that Francis touches.
Or one that Mula touches, or
Wolf
touches.
Okay.
Yep.
We will. There is a body found. Okay, there's a body that has been found, and the body has an aberrant dragon mark.
Okay, so just with that connection, I want you to tell me a story on what the hell happened. Just with what's here.
All right. So our fourth character is probably still, taking care of the tab in the bar here because everyone's the friends are leaving here. They find the body, and upon investigation, Ulf, he does have some herbalism proficiency. He probably wants to go and administer first aid. He's not a bad guy, but he has his regrets. He finds on the body an aberrant dragon mark. Aberrant dragon marks don't. They don't look alike. They don't all look the same, but he recognizes the signs and symptoms of one. And so here he sees someone that has been afflicted similarly as him, but this person is dead.
Okay.
And
follow your web. Just follow your web.
Yep. From here, looking at the signs, the body. This wasn't this wasn't Grandpa sitting by a fire in his favorite rocking chair. This was probably a murder, and especially from someone who feels guilty about bearing such a stigma, especially in Eberron. This murder could very well be tied to even the criminal network to which he belongs. Or if not, there are actual proper dragon mark houses that might send people out to go hunt down aberrant dragon marks for either kind of the sake of purity or to keep these sort of, because accidents happen around these people. People die. The manifestation of power can be violent. Meanwhile, the proper dragon marked houses have the training facilities to foster a dragon mark and to train. And so really, I guess that could be a source of investigation, as Ulf is going to be a little paranoid about that. Could this person, like him, have been killed by a dragon mark house, or could this have just been honestly someone stabbed him and took his coin purse, and it could have been a criminal activity? If not a hit, it could have just been crime alley behind the Gotham State Theater kind of a thing.
Yep. But watch what happens when you start running with it with the rest of it. You know about the mark, right? So this continues on, right? What is the mark attached to? There's a few things we can do.
Yeah, so the dragon mark is attached to Francis's family, and kind of indirectly the employers of Mula.
Yep.
And so this could be a sign. Hang on.
It's okay.
If a proper family killed this somebody with an aberrant dragon mark because their son Francis was cavorting with someone who is discovered to have an aberrant dragon mark, this could very well be a very gentle you need to part companies now, because we don't want you affiliating with that, or tragedy can strike, and And so maybe in proximity to with Francis, if Francis is getting this this slightly like luck bending cosmic being's influence, maybe the person who waylaid this body, it should have been Ulf. However, Francis's inherent protection said, "Oh, hey Ulf, hang on 1 second here. I got to make sure." And he's like patting down his pockets, and Ulf is like, "Come on, we gotta go." But that couple seconds bought it because maybe the killer didn't have a lot of time and saw someone with and maybe another dwarf with an aberrant dragon mark and thought it was Ulf. It's dark, made the strike, and then had to retreat. And meanwhile, not that they're aware of this sort of bending luck, but it could have been Ulf, and maybe even Francis realizes that as well.
So you notice somehow we have conspiracy immediately, because now it's like, okay, what's the body? All this kind of stuff. They're going to start talking to people. They're going to start figuring this out.
Well, yeah.
Somewhere in these circles, we have a murderer.
And obviously, Francis is going to report on this. It's going to get to the newspaper.
Yep.
Hell, the body could even be a casino employee or something if we really wanted to. I don't want to make things too contrived. Like, just because I can make a link, I think a measure of discretion should be used as a DM or storyteller. Because I can make I think if I really sit down and think about it, I'm sure I could link everything to everything.
You can. Trust me, you can. But here's the thing. The rule here is, the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon?
Yes.
Right? That's what's going on here. Now, this body means somebody ended up killing them. Probably for a reason. Might have been Ulf. Might have been that they were trying to go after Ulf. And if that's the case, once they start poking and prodding, somebody out there found out we got the wrong guy, and now they're on to us. Well, they're going to start making moves, which means the web is going to start shifting.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of how you get this push me pull you, or as I like to say, strings of dominoes. One thing, and the body is just your call to action. How many games do you think you can get out of just what you have here?
Oh,
because
yeah.
Of all we did was slap one body there. So the body is our call to action.
Yeah. So just imagining that if the body was the NPC lover, and while we're talking about all of these regrets and all this like emotional stagnation, suddenly that body is super personal to Mula, and at the same time, what if this character feels actually relief because she's not in this torturous relationship anymore, where once there was love, now there's not. The NPC lover doesn't have to suffer anymore. Obviously a crime happened and she's probably upset at that, but what if she's dealing with those guilty feelings about now she doesn't have to care for this person to whom she feels she owes a debt and not her heart and love? And that's a whole different story with a whole other set of emotional explorations and heartstrings.
Yep, but ultimately, the biggest difference here between what you and I both do, right? Like this is you going to what I do, is what happens from that point forward is entirely the player's driven. I'm not worried about them getting from point A to point B or to point C at that point, right? Mm-hmm. I'm just watching how the map unfolds. All I did was set up the dominoes and put the strings in. How it all comes down, how it all builds up, is now always in the player's hands. So when I tell people I'm just here to set the window dressing, I set the stage, I play the minor NPCs and all this is your story, this is what I mean. This is their story. Because no matter what they do, it's always going to end up coming back. It's always going to come back to them. It's always going to end up influencing them. It's always going to be within their power to change the landscape. Maybe in small ways, but those small ways can domino real quick.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know if it'd be, there might still be the pitfall of railroading in a way, I guess, or I don't know. More like maybe there's hard boundaries to the sandbox, but if you're in the sandbox, do whatever you want. because you really can't go wrong, because everything does have a possible, a possible connection.
Yeah.
Well,
like I said, this is very different from the way you approach games, to my
oh,
understanding.
oh yeah, this is this type of storytelling and character development. This is not how I normally do so, or even present. But that's the beauty of role playing games, my friend. And I know I'm preaching to the choir to you about this. There's so many different styles and so many different ways you can approach it. You find the one that really resonates with you, and it can unlock so much that you might not have realized you had. And it's also a good mental exercise to keep you sharp and observant. But I'll tell you what, though, we've been going for a little bit. I could use to get up and stretch and take a little bit of a break. If you want to stick around, that's fine, because I'd love to finish filling out this character map. We got the 4th character, and maybe even, if not, do a couple other prompts, like with the body, to develop... you
can erase the body. I just wanted to use the body as a point so you can see it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right? So,
this is a very visual style, and that's I think that's a part of inherent, because you're an artist. Not that you're not a storyteller, but you have this, you have a way of looking at the world through an artist's eye that I do not possess, and so I tend to be more wordy, and you tend to be very visual in your presentations. And that's what's so fun, and why I actually appreciate you being here, Derek, because while I pride myself on being a workshop and hopefully being accessible, and when you run workshops, I'm sure it's the same way, because I know you've been talking to up and coming STs and others who really get involved with this. We have our styles, and to change it up a little bit, to challenge ourselves, to try looking at something a little bit differently, keeps us sharper, keeps us more well-informed and even refreshed. But anyway, I'm going to get up and take about a 10-minute break, and if you want to stick around, that's fine. Otherwise, I'm going to finish out this 4th character, and maybe talk about like a...
I'll stick around and chat for a little bit,
Sure.
But ultimately, I have an AM shift.
Oh, right. Yeah. Then do what you got to do.
All right.
Cool.
Thank you very much for having me on. I'm hoping you learned something. I hope everybody else has seen this and kind of went, oh, this is kind of nifty. But whenever you end up hearing me say strings and dominoes, this is what I mean.
All right. Thank you, sir.